time. So stay with us to the next part of this forum, which is the part of the innovation technology. And Dorothee, I saw that you came in and out. You're here with us today. Are you present?
I'm
great. So Dorothee, please, the floor is yours if you would like to present.
I think Dorothee prefers to present her slides, no? Is what you told me?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait a second. I will try to.
Okay.
While Dorothea is preparing his slideshow, I will just call for your help, everyone, to propose a subject for future forum. Well, I have a number in reserve, but maybe you have some that could be of interest for you and for the others. So please do not hesitate to send an email to Fleur at the communication email address, and we will be delighted to try to answer to your questions. Thank you.
Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Super. Then I will start. So I want to talk about subsurface irrigation and water storage technologies for greening and water saving in the gardening and landscaping sector. I want to start with a short input about conventional surface irrigation, then followed by climate change and consequences for plants, potential solutions like subsurface irrigation, subsurface textile irrigation systems, compare this with the surface irrigation system, then compare the different subsurface textile system, and the last point would be subsurface textile water storage and distribution systems. So let's start with conventional surface irrigation with sprinklers or trippers. Advantages, of course, are that they are cost effective. You can visually check if there is a water outcoming. It's easy to automatize. It's flexible, and it's very easy to renew. The disadvantage is what also Nicolas mentioned in his presentation, that you use valuable drinking water, and of course you have evaporation if the irrigation is from surface. Sometimes the wind is drifting the water away. Drip tubes and pop-up sprinklers get sometimes damaged by UV or heavy loads or vandalism. It's sometimes the water consumption could be high. Mowing or walking is not possible during irrigation. You have the risk of surface felting with soil compaction, and regarding to climate change, yeah, that's really an issue if surface irrigation eco-friendly enough for irrigating our plants. So there are some studies which say that 2024 will end up as the warmest year on record, and of course this has consequences for our plants. They suffer from and dry off. So a potential solution could be subsurface irrigation. There are two main options on the market, either subsurface drip irrigation sometimes in combination with hydrogels, and this is mostly used in the agriculture. Or the second option are subsurface textile irrigation systems, which are mostly used in the gardening and landscaping. And this is, I want to talk now more in detail. For subsurface textile irrigation systems, usually geotextile nonwovens with an air void content of 80 to 90% are used. So really a lot of water can be stored internally in these pores and distributed capillary. And some of these nonwovens store more than 10 liter water per kilo. Usually they are installed at root depths, so they can use the water really effectively. The drip irrigation tubes are mostly protected by a nonwoven covering so that the roots cannot grow in. And in the case of this coating of the tubes, the water is distributed along the coating and transferred to the underlying nonwoven and distributed over the surface. There are various options for installing the tube. The first is you embed it between two full service textiles shown in graph 1, or it's individually wrapped and placed on either a full service fleece shown in graph 2, or on a fleece net shown in graph 3. Here you can see two different subsurface textile irrigation systems. The first one is a full mat with non-coated tubes on it's a roof greening example. And here the tubes are placed directly on the drainage layer. The second one is a net fleece with coated drip irrigation tubes, also a roof greening example. And here the system could be placed, because it's a net form, at root level and not directly on the drainage layer. This is an enlargement of the nonwoven material, and you can see that the air void is quite high. It's normally around 80 to 90%. And in the open interconnected pores, an extremely large amount of air and water can be stored. And as I've said before, some of the materials, 1 kilo, store up to 10 liters of water. So that's really a high water storage capacity. Normally you use polypropylene or polyester. So if I try to compare subsurface textile irrigation with surface irrigation, there are of course advantages and disadvantages. Some studies says, for example, that the water savings with subsurface irrigation compared to spray irrigation in very hot countries, where the water already evaporates in the air or you have much wind. And normally, and in European climates, the savings with sprinkler irrigation are of course lower, with high variation, I have to say, and even less with surface drip irrigation. One of the advantages of subsurface irrigation is that the area can also be used, played or mowed during irrigation. You have less matting, weeds and waterlogging on the surface. So this reduces maintenance costs, evaporation and surface runoff on slopes. And even and effective water distribution is really directly at root level. So you have less seepage loss, you have a protection of the drip irrigation tubes, so vandalism is not possible. less fertilizers are required, as the fertilizers can be really applied precisely to the roots. And you can, also the distance between the tubes can be significantly increased with this distribution textile, so you can enlarge it from 50 to 60 centimeter. The disadvantages are, of course, higher initial costs. It's not flexible when you change the plants. You don't have a visual control, so therefore you need moisture sensors to measure if the system really works. You have to be careful if you do aerification. And sometimes you need initial subsurface watering until the roots are deep enough and they are docking onto the material. So now I want to move to compare the different subsurface systems. The first would be a drip irrigation tube, either coated or not, for subsurface irrigation. Both are more sustainable alternative to conventional surface drip irrigation, because the water is used more effectively and reduces evaporation. So the water is really delivered directly to the roots of the plants. So when we compare the drip irrigation tube with the covering and with not, I have to mention that the tube protection from root ingrowth is mechanically, and it's a protective non-woven covering. So the protective non-woven covering distributes the water really immediately. So the roots do not know where to attack. So maybe, or in other words, they are confused. So they don't know where is the water. So you have really a protection against this root ingrowth. The geotextile protective non-wovens prevent also blockages caused by fine particles. You have less seepage loss due to the distribution in the cover. The water contact, the water-soil contact is increased 1,000-fold by the water distribution in the non-woven covering, and significantly a better water distribution in system with non-wovens, especially when you have mixed soil conditions. The disadvantages of these drip irrigation tubes are higher costs, and when you have this non-woven covering, this coating, the weight of the coating can be even greater than that of the tube. A second option of textile subsurface systems are full service systems, in which irrigation tubes are needled between two geotextile. They are available on the market in Europe for around 30 years. In some cases, also additional water storage elements are used between the two layers. Then there are also other full service variants on the market where the tubes are sewn in between two layers of the non-woven material, or the tubes are laid or fixed on a full service distribution fleece with or without a non-woven coating. So both is possible. Full service systems must be installed relatively precisely at root depth, so you don't have much opportunities. You have to really place it at root depth. And the full service variants are quite easy to install for wide base areas with suitable width, for example, between tram or train tracks, like the picture below. But in the event of overwatering, the water flows downwards as the roots cannot reach it. And on slopes, the full service version can create a sliding layer, sometimes on which the floor slips on the wet fleece. So a newer and more cost-effective system is a non-woven net. The water distribution net only needs about approximately 25 to 35% of the total area. So this results in significant changes compared to full service variants. So you don't have a barrier effect. The roots can really pass through the net and dock onto the material mesh all around. So really 100% of the water stored in the material is available for the plants, including also the underside of the fleece, which is not the case with full service systems. The installation depth is much more flexible. So if you have, for example, a lawn, you put it higher, roughly 10 centimeters underground. And if you have a tree, you put it deeper, so you can really put it in a three-dimensional form. It's very flexible, so it can even be wrapped around a root ball of trees, which it is shown in the picture below. The full service variants are easy to install for consistently wide base areas with a suitable width. But however, the net variant has clear advantages when you have small or somewhat more complicated floor areas. And the tubes can be laid parallel or like a floor heating system in a meandering way on the net, and the tube space is approximately 50 to 60 centimeter. The full service variants bounce slightly under load. The net version does not, as the load is really transferred downwards via the spaces between the net. This means that, for example, the water stored in a non-woven material on a soccer pitch is partially squeezed out downwards when a player runs over it in the full service version, but this is not the case in the net version. Even in the event of overwatering, the water drains away downwards with the full service variant, as the roots cannot reach it, whereas this is not the case with the net variant. Also on slopes, the full service version quickly creates a sliding layer where the soil slides on the wet fleece. The net variant interlocks with both the soil and also the roots, and can therefore be installed on much steeper slopes than the full variant. In addition, with this meander effect, this means that on a slope the water is held much better in this net variant. So, and the last one, this is maybe also a combination with the Spong City. Nicolas presented. So you can use these textile systems also without the drip irrigation tube, also just the textile, either in a strip form, which you put at root level, so the substrate is improved, you have loosened compacted soil, aeration and support of the vegetation of the plants. the water storage capacity is significantly increased, so the plants can access all the water stored in the non-woven material, and if they are getting dry, they are just pulling out the water. Or the same function is a net which stores the water, but also distributes the water. If you have larger areas, it's very flexible. The roots can dock around the material, and it's quite easy to install, especially for trees. You just put the net around the root ball. Especially the issue of rains is that the raining intervals are very short. So the raining water is just laying in the top layer of the soil, and it is not moving to the trees, to the roots of the trees. But with this net, the water is really distributed directly to the roots of the plants. Yes, thank you for your attention. This was my presentation. So if you have any questions, please, you are welcome.
Thank you, Dorothee. Questions from the audience by raising hands or by